So we're back at Yara for our final video of the series, and in this one we're going to look at all the things you would do whilst finalising your greens. So in this case what I mean is pinning your greens, checking the slopes are okay for play, and also green speeds. What might you set them as and the factors that you might go into consideration there. Now I want to first talk about things that are absolute must nots. I see some people, or a number of people, will make one pin set really easy and one pin set really difficult. Usually it's pin 4 is really difficult and pin 1 is really easy, and they go up in difficulty. That's stupid. That's not how people would do it in real life, and I've always hated the mantra that, well, you have to earn your score on Sunday. I mean, yes, but give people a chance to blow up on the way, give people a chance to make a birdie or an eagle with a heroic shot, things like that. And equally with pin 1 being really easy, it's not really giving a true flavour of your course. And so what we're going to talk about is really variety. Pin sets for me are a way to make your course play slightly differently on each one. And as you'll have seen when we've been doing the greens tutorials, if you set your greens up well, each hole should have slightly different playing interest depending on where you put the pin. Now then, when you factor in potentially changing wind direction, wind strength, etc., green speed, the course is going to play really differently depending on subtle changes, and that gives it infinite replayability factor. So I do think that this is something that is worth taking your time over and considering, because the key thing as ever is just that variety. So we're going to exit out of this view, which is really difficult to control on camera, and we're going to look at the first view. For me, I want to always try to make sure that I'm not doing the same thing too many times. Now, things you want to bear in mind: length of hole, par, and direction of hole, because you want to be thinking about whether you're asking the same player to hit the same sort of shot the same time, a number of times, under the same conditions. So let's say we've got a southeast wind. How is this hole playing, etc. So what I want to do also there are a few things that I have in mind with different positions. With pin 1, most people are going to play this pin set, so you want it to be a flavour pin set of sorts, and basically have it highlight as much as you can the best of every hole without necessarily being your stellar pin position. So for example, because that's quite hard to explain, pin 1 on this one is right here. Now, is that the most interesting pin on the screen? No, but it does bring this central bunker right into play. It does force you to make that decision off the tee. It does really highlight that strategy. Is it a birdie opportunity? Yeah, I mean, you land at this side and you've got an uphill putt. There's danger, but there's also a relatively easy birdie putt if you get your approach shot right. Pin 1 on this green is then back left. That's a really easy accessible pin, and you can run the ball in. It emphasises ground game, so that makes sense. Pin 1 therefore on 3 has to be the difficult one, at least in my mind. So that's this back right one. And so we go on, and straight away you can see we've had a mixture of front, we've had back middle, we've had back right. Pin 1 on 4 I believe is the middle pin. Yep, so dead centre. So you can see we're already varying this. And in order to do that, what I will do is actually write these out. I will write down numbers 1 through 18 on a piece of paper. I'll write down pins 1 through 4, and I'll basically write down 2 things about each pin. I'll write down where I've put it on the green, and I'll write down whether I think it's red, amber or green, in terms of red, amber, like, is it a go, dead go pin? Is it like a hard no, stay away, make par? Or is it like somewhere in the middle? For me, this one's amber, this one's green, complete easy go for, and this one's red, just hit middle of the green and 2-putt, because there's a lot of danger there. And you kind of, wouldn't say you need to do that every 3 holes. You need to hit red, amber and green. What you want to do when I'm charting that progress is making sure that holes 1, 2, 3, 4 are not all reds for pin set 1, and I've not put the pin at the back on 3, 4 consecutive holes, things like that. Now within that, you're also then going to want to check your par 3s as a group. If I put pin 1 back right on 3, where have I put pin 1 on 11? Well, pin 1 on 11 is also at the back. Do I worry about that? Well, not really. That's 160, the other one's 200. They play in different directions, so I'm okay with that. But you want to factor these sorts of things in, because let's say you do have a 160 par 3 and a 180 par 3. Let's say they were both going in opposite directions. If you have the pin at the back on one and the front on another, well, you might end up hitting a 170 shot twice. So just bear that in mind. Additionally, think about your par 3s and try not to make one round all really difficult on par 3s. Same with par 5s. Like, always just consider your holes as a group. But I think that's it on pinning. That's really all I do, is just think about things a lot. Now, in terms of finalising your slopes, what I'd look at doing is just making sure that there's no weird breaks. Now, if you've done that plot manipulation trick that I've shown you, you may need to do this, and where possible, a little flatten to get those slopes rolling consistently near the pin. It never hurts, just because you can get some really weird breaks. Personally, I still try to stick to the rule that we had pretty closely on the old TGC, which was the 9 box around the pin. So where's pin 1 on the screen, because it's defaulting to this one. Yeah, this 9 box here, I will try not to have any yellow within that. Light green is fine, yellow not. Now, that doesn't mean to say that all of your pins need to be like that, and it's a rule that you can break. So for example, I think pin 3 on this one, a short par 5 that's very much reachable and encouraging you to leave it short. Well, I wondered if you went long for that to be a really dicey putt, and given that orange and yellows are okay, that one is pretty dicey. So it's something that you can break, but just be wary about when you do it. And that brings us on to our final point about green speeds and what speed should you publish at. Well, with TGC Tours, there's one, we use these settings. So if you go into green speed, the 8.1s, 8.5s, they aren't really very helpful. What we look for is when you're playing, because they're imprecise, and if you were putting, if you're putting at 8.0, there's like 2 different speeds at 8.0, for example. So what we look at is when you're putting from here, what's the speed in the top right hand corner? And we would call these at 177s. So I would try to publish something like that. For example, this was my published speed at what we'll call 177s, because that's how far the ball would travel if you putted at maximum power, basically on a flat green, although it's not quite that. So what speeds should you publish at? Well, when we're setting them for tour, we have some default speeds. One of them is 144, one is 163, one is 187s, and those are if we, when scheduling it, adjust the speeds to medium, fast, or very fast. Those are the corresponding speeds. So you want to publish at something between those to give schedulers one extra choice, basically. What I would recommend is that you're testing on the maximum speed you wish the greens to be playable. So I'd be looking at this and deciding whether I think that pin is too dicey at 187s. I decided it was just about okay, but it's pretty close. So I play tested this course a ton at 177 and also at full speeds, because that's the highest I would want it to go to. Not every course should be playable at 187s. If you're playing a bumpy links course that's traditionally got a load of mounds and things like that, it shouldn't be playable at 187s because it should never be set up that way. But you might want to check that it's playable at 163, for example, if you were planning on publishing at 156. I would strongly recommend that you never publish below about 150, because the greens they just don't break very well at that sort of speed. Even 144, you kind of feel like you have to really hit the ball rather than just stroke a putt. So anyway, that's the end of this video, and I think I've covered everything in terms of playtesting, pinning, how you balance pin sets, etc. I hope that you've enjoyed this series, and thank you for following along.